Welcome to the Damn Good Dogcast. It is Cinco de Mayo, and boy, what a show we've got for you. We are talking Florida Gators and cocktail party. What a show. Dan, welcome to the show.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's
Hey,
excited to be here.
not a problem. Hey, man, I know this is going to be a fun show. You talking Cinco de Drinko, the
That's
unofficial
right.
holiday for drinking there, and we're talking
Absolutely.
cocktail party, man. It just
I
couldn't.
love it.
Oh, man, it's always fun to talk cocktail parties, man. It always is.
Especially
Anyways,
coming off a victory, you know?
you know what though? But three before, I think we're good.
I love
But
it, dude.
no,
I
man.
love
But no, I just wanted to thank you again for coming on. I know we've been waiting for this. I have. I love talking Florida and Georgia. Obviously, I think it's both of ours favorite rivalry here.
it. Yep.
Tennessee don't count right now because they're just in
Nope.
a complete shit show. That's all I'm going to say there. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump in. Obviously, people come in whenever they're ready, but
hmm
obviously, the big the elephant in the room, right? Georgia coughs up the cocktail party last year, and y'all take one away. Looking forward though, I think this year is going to be a better game.
hmm
Um, Definitely think it's going to be a better game. Looking at the rosters and things like that, Georgia didn't have JT Daniels, and there
hmm
was a lot of people. I don't know if you followed the Georgia situation, but a lot of people I heard talking about, if JT Daniels would have been this and he would have played, blah, blah, blah. People got pissed off at Kirby a little bit, man.
hmm
Um, but looking into it, though, obviously JT, God forbid an injury, he'll be playing in Jacksonville. And I'm just curious. I know with last year, with the offense and everything you had, you're losing a lot of that, right? So you lost Kadarius Toney, went first round to the Giants.
hmm
Then Trask and Kyle Pitts went to Atlanta, fourth overall.
hmm
So to me, that's a lot of offensive production lost. So how obviously you follow the Gators as much as anybody that I know. How are y'all coping with losing that much offensive firepower?
Sure. No, that's a great question. And like I said, it's exciting to be on. I don't know if there's an exact answer to that question until we see it. We don't really know. Florida returns Emory Jones as their starting quarterback, who over the last few years has played sparingly, but when he has played, pretty well. Florida and Dan Mullen have not really had him throwing the ball very often, but when Kyle Trask went down with a potential injury against Auburn with his knee, Emory Jones came in for a drive before Kyle Trask came back and looked pretty good throwing the ball. But again, we haven't seen much of him throwing the ball, so we'll see. Obviously, he's a more prototypical Dan Mullen type of quarterback where he's, more of a dual threat. He can run. So we'll see. He's definitely a question mark there. Florida does return all of their running backs, and then they do bring on Demarcus Bowman, who transferred from Clemson, who was a 5-star in the 2020 recruiting class, to join those ranks. You add Damian Pierce, who is Florida's stable running back last year, Malik Davis, who's played quite a bit, and Naquan Wright, who really came on towards the end of the year. And then Florida's also going to count on Lorenzo Lingard, who's a former 5-star running back who transferred from the University of Miami a couple of seasons ago. So Florida is loaded at the running back position for really the first time in quite some time. Florida is going to be replacing Kadarius Toney and Trayvon Grimes at the wide receiver position. There's still some question marks there. Justin Shorter is going to need to step up. Jacob Copeland is going to need to step up. But you definitely have a lot of turnover, in that wide receiver room. Florida had a lot of turnover in the wide receiver room the year before for a lot of guys. 4 guys going into the NFL draft. So, Florida has talent. It's a little bit unproven. So we'll see. And then obviously losing Kyle Pitts. I mean, it's hard to say that you're going to be able to replace the highest drafted tight end in NFL history. Florida has some talent there, but it's definitely going to be a drop off. So we'll see.
Yeah, I know. Looking into that though, obviously in hindsight, obviously the dog fans here, man, a lot of them are Georgia Falcons fans. Not all
Mm-hmm.
of them, but most of them are. So, I think a lot of people looking at this, saw what Pitts was about, and Pitts was that hybrid kind of the receiver / tight end. This really makes it a mismatch nightmare. But
Right.
you look at Toney with I would say I wouldn't say I don't know about world class speed, but definitely a speedster. obviously you lose that talent, and it's going to be hard to replace that. I don't think you can replace Kyle Pitts, period. There's no
Mm-mm.
question about that. Just trying to get as much back as what you can. But looking at it, though, obviously, I don't expect this, the cocktail party this coming up year to really. I don't really have it. The offensive is going to be there. The offensive side of the ball is going to be there for both teams. Georgia, looking at bringing one of the most stacked offenses in recent memory, at least in my opinion. You have a competent quarterback. I think what separates this year, in my opinion, is the scheme. In years past, we've had more focus on the run game, and it's hard to really. I guess it's hard to win games and get to your goals, national title contention and stuff like that when you don't have that pass game. And you're looking at 2020 coming into this year, and there's no question about it. Georgia's loaded at the receiver position, tight ends, mostly across the board, obviously with offensive line being our question. So I don't expect it to be a problem scoring points, which makes it really a damn good cocktail party, in my opinion, potentially. But obviously the questions come on the defense. Last year, Florida's defense, in my opinion, was not good.
That's more than an opinion. They were not good. No.
Yeah. So I was just trying to put it nicely, I guess you could say. It was not good. Y'all let go of Torian Gray. You keep Grantham there.
Yep.
You keep Grantham there, which in my opinion, I thought wasn't the best call. What were your thoughts when y'all kept Grantham, but you let go of the secondary coaches?
So that's an interesting question. I don't know. There's obviously a lot of layers. One of the things that Dan Mullen is and who he's always been is a coach that has always been very favorable to keeping coaches, to keeping that continuity and everything else. Dan Mullen and Todd Grantham have now worked together for 4 years. Dan Mullen had a lot of excuses to why, right? COVID-19, changing out a lot of different players. On the defense, there's a lot of excuses made, in my opinion, about why Todd Grantham was retained. I don't know the reason why he was or why he wasn't let go. I don't know if it's a monetary reason. I don't know if there's other reasons why. I don't know if they, checked out to see who might be interested in joining and the pool wasn't great. I don't know. I do think it's interesting, that Florida had a bad defense last year, and their two defensive players that were drafted were two players from the two position coaches that got fired. Right? Florida has talent. All of the players that started for Florida, last year on defense were guys that were recruited by all your big programs, across the country. So it's not a talent issue. Now it's a development issue. There's some very interesting, decision making. So I don't have an opinion on Todd Grantham staying. I don't know, what was his call, what wasn't. I don't know what the talent was, what it wasn't. I don't know how much COVID-19 did or did not. But what I will say is that I think that you're going to see a more prototypical Todd Grantham defense this year than you saw last year. And what I mean by that is I think that they're going to be a bit more aggressive. I think that you're fine. I think that they're going to be a bit more aggressive. I think that they're going to play closer to the line of scrimmage. Florida has different cornerbacks this year than they had last year. And they have different safeties than they had last year in terms of the style of play that they are. They're a lot bigger. They're a lot stronger. And they're just like bigger bodied people. So we'll see how that defense changes. But, Florida, the only way that Florida can beat Georgia next year is by putting together, a solid defensive performance. And I think they have the skill to do it. Now it's the scheme to be able to do it.
Yeah, I know. Typically, when you look at this game right here, in my opinion, I always think that you can never overlook either team, right? Even if you're having a down year, we saw it. Right? You see these situations where Florida can lose to Georgia out on Georgia's having a down year, and vice versa. So it's definitely, I think it's a schematic thing, right? So you look at along your defense, right? I think your defensive line could set the tone, perhaps. You look at Javon Dexter, you look at Brenton Cox. Those guys right there are going to, I think, set the tone or what needs to set the tone come cocktail party week. I think you have to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see how, your defense and our offense. It's weird that a Georgia team coming into the season's strength is your offense. It's not normal for us, but it's a pleasant surprise, I guess you could say. But
I would say it's the same in Florida. Florida didn't I think if Florida has a more competent defense last year, they don't lose to Texas A&M. They don't lose to LSU. That game against Alabama, you can say that Florida could have beat them. I mean, we were within a touchdown. I don't know if anybody was stopping Alabama last year, so I'll leave that one to the side.
That was good, man. I
But
don't know if anybody could have, to be honest.
and I think that we played a hell of a game, and I think that we played as good of a game as you could ask for. But you take those two wins out, and it's a completely differently into this season. Florida's strength is on the defensive line. You mentioned Gervon Dexter, you mentioned Brenton Cox. Florida brought in two transfers, one from Penn State and one from Auburn, to fill into that 0 and 1 technique and 3 technique defensive tackle positions. But Florida brings back Zachary Carter, who, really came on late, towards the end of last season. There was some, question marks whether he was going to go to the NFL this year. He was probably a mid to late round draft guy. So Florida's going to rely heavily on him to step in. Florida has some solid defensive players. Trey Dean really started to come on at the safety position last year. Kyer Elam is a potential top 10 pick at cornerback next year. Florida brought in 5-star Jason Marshall, who's going to likely play, that cornerback position, on the other side of Kyer Elam. So, Florida has some talent there. They have Ventrell Miller at linebacker, who some folks are talking about. I'm not, but other folks, and so I'll say they are talking about him being a potential first-round draft pick as well. So, Florida has some talent. What they really need to do is they just need to play more aggressive on the ball. They need to be, able to press more at the line of scrimmage at cornerback, because Georgia is a really solidly strong program, and at wide receiver especially, right? Like, we've known Georgia for the last decade and a half to really have some outstanding running backs. Well, not only do they have outstanding running backs this year, they've got some really good wide receiver, George Pickens, who's a potential first round, pick. So there's a lot of talent there. And so what Florida has to do is they have to be able to get to JT Daniel, and they need to be able to, to go after and be aggressive at where you say is a little bit weaker at the offensive line. So,
yep. Looking at the matchup, right? Like I said, I think it's going to be our offense against your defense, and who can really stop it, in my opinion. I know, the Will route has come to haunt many a Dog fans just this past year alone. I honestly believe moving forward into the season, I don't know if that's going to be that much of an issue. I think it may, but I don't think it'll kill us like it did last year. But honestly, looking at our offense, though, I know you talked about Pickens, right? And everybody knows Pickens. Everybody knows him. You have to respect them. My take is I don't see Pickens being ready before the cocktail party. So, obviously that leaves some major questions, into the season with what's going on with, the receiving group. And I think you look at guys coming back off of injury, Marcus Roseme, which actually had that horrific injury in the cocktail party this past year. He'll be back. You look at Don Blaylock, which a lot of people may have forgotten because of the resurgence with JT and company last 4 games with Jermaine going off. But Don Blaylock is a very, consistent, good player. So there's a lot of depth right there. But the one name that I think is going to be interesting to see is Arian Smith. And if you have any Gators fans listening, this guy is fast. And I'm not talking about he's fast. No, this kid is world-class speed. So it's going to be interesting to see if I want to see Kyer against Arian, because I know Kyer coming out of high school, damn good safety prospect. Obviously, it was a huge battle between Georgia and Florida, but obviously he ended up picking up and going to Gainesville. So I know Kyer is good. I think he has the potential to be all SEC. Obviously, time will tell, but that's just my prediction. He has the potential to at least be first team, maybe second team at least. So, obviously, I think that'll be a good matchup. I want to see how our speed, because this year we actually have a lot of speed. Top of this thing, looking at it, Kyer is going to be a huge threat to our receiving core. So I think, to me, that might be the biggest matchup for me, is seeing how our offensive, especially the receivers, match up against your secondary. And obviously you cannot sleep on Darnell Washington. That dude is a monster. He's going to be a matchup nightmare. How do your linebackers or how do your safeties handle that?
I'll believe the Darnell Washington, when he is productive. I think that he's an incredible athlete, but right now it hasn't quite transferred over. I think that it could. I think that the way that Georgia beats, Florida at the receiver position next year is not by trying to match up Arian Smith against Kyrie Elam. It's going to be your second and third, wide receivers matching up against Florida's second and third DB. And what I mean by that is, let's just say Jason Marshall is starting. Obviously, you're 7-8 games into the season when Florida plays Georgia, but he's still going to be a freshman. Behind him, you have Jaden Hill, who will be either a redshirt sophomore or junior. I guess what we'll call him a redshirt sophomore.
Okay.
A kid has skills. Kid is decent, but he's skinny, he's thin, he's not the world's best tackler. And then after that, you have a pretty large drop off, right? So, where Georgia's going to beat Florida isn't trying to say, hey, let's get Arian Smith over top of Kyrie Elam. Not saying that there won't be an opportunity to do that, but it's going to be where your mismatches are, and it's going to be attacking where Florida's a little bit weak, and that's at your secondary positions, right? Florida's going to be starting. If you consider that Florida's going to always play a nickel, cornerback, where that they call the star position. So Florida's replacing 3 of their 5 starters there. And of the one that is starting, Trey Dean at that star safety position, he was, a backup for most of the season. So, Florida is in essence replacing 4 of those people. Now, it's a different, thing to say game 1 versus game 8, but if Florida sustains an injury there, Florida's very, very weak at that position for the first time in probably 2 decades. So that's where Georgia can beat Florida. Florida is missing some size in the linebacker room as well. So if Georgia wants to beat them, it might be a ground and pound, type of situation. But, like you said, probably 10 minutes ago, this is a very fluky game. If you would have told me when Florida was down 14-0 4 minutes into the game last week that Florida would put up 41, to 14 points, right? I would have never believed you. But it's a fluky game and a lot can happen. And I think that Florida has a lot of talent now. It's just a matter of putting it all together, especially in defense.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so we're going to move on talking about personnel and the depth chart and things like that. We're going to actually talk about the cocktail party itself.
Yeah.
So it's always this topic, heated topic. I believe one way I've heard a lot of backlash, even within the Dog Nation, different ways. So my thing is, I want to hear your thoughts on it, and I'll kind of touch on mine to see maybe where we are here. But where do you stand on the side of the cocktail party being in Jacksonville? Do you think it should be in Jacksonville every year, or do you think that it should be a home-and-home series, and why?
First off, I want to put on record that the game is the Florida-Georgia game. Georgia-Florida doesn't make sense. Alphabetically, it doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. So I want to let everybody from Dog Nation know that just alphabetically, that's just the way that we do things, right? It's Alabama, Auburn. It's not all Auburn, Alabama, right? It's just alphabetical order. That's what we're following here. But no, you know what? I've always been a fan of alternating it. I would love to have a 4-year rotation where maybe you have 2 years in Jacksonville, 1 year in Athens, and 1 year in Gainesville. I do think it is obviously an advantage for Florida. The game is closer. Jacksonville is probably your 3rd or 4th largest hub of Gator alumni in the country. I do know that it is, obviously closer to Gainesville than it is to Athens. I don't know if there's an alternative, site that you could have it at, right? Like you can't have it at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, right? Like that's, just solving the problem on the opposite way, right? So I would love the idea of, Florida being able to play in Athens. I would love Georgia to come to Gainesville. I know it's happened a couple times over the last, couple decades because of some scheduling conflicts, things of that nature. But, I would love, when I was an undergrad at UF, I had the opportunity to travel and visit a lot of stadiums, but still never got to, see between the hedges. So I would love to see that game. I like that it's in Jacksonville. I like the theme of it all, but I'd love to see that game every once in a while be played, in a home and home situation.
Yeah, I kind of feel I feel where you're going, but for me, I personally want to see it home and home. And I've never been to Jacksonville, but I think my logic is, recruiting. Me personally, I love recruiting. And, when you have a neutral site game, when it comes to these recruits, the game is obviously going to be one of the biggest ones of the week every time. However, you've got to deal with losing a recruiting week, for your school. And if you have that home and home, you have that extra week. And as we know, when it comes down to these battles, obviously between Georgia and Florida, that can make or break a recruit's choice. so I look at it that way. I know Kirby Smart said it that way as well before, but I understand the history. So I respect the history of it being in Jacksonville. I know Florida. There's a lot of Florida fans. Obviously, there's a lot of Georgia fans. Typically, every year you watch it, the stadium's pretty much split even with red and blue. So obviously, it's not a question of people going or things like that. I just look at it from a recruiting standpoint, which is what I would like to see. The home and homes more often, maybe. I would love to get to Athens and see Georgia Florida play between the hedges. For
Yeah.
me, so
I don't. I get the excuse that it's a recruiting weekend that you're missing and everything else, but I mean, I don't think it makes a huge difference. When I worked at UF, I worked in the football recruiting office for 3.5 years, and I never really heard that as a real true reason to why a player didn't come or couldn't get onto campus. There's so many recruiting weekends that players can come. There's so many opportunities, and for the most part, because Florida and Georgia do play that away neutral site game every year, they usually pack their schedule with an easier team that they don't have to give a home and home to, right, where they can get that extra home game and make up, right? I mean, you think that Florida and Georgia both play 12 regular season games, at least 7 of them every year are at home, right? So like you're already at a little bit of an advantage than a lot of schools that are playing 5 at home, maybe 6 at home. So Florida and Georgia both have a lot of opportunities for them to have students come onto campus. I don't think it makes a huge difference, and playing that primetime football game on CBS every year is just as much of a recruiting pitch as being able to bring a player to Athens. So I don't know if I buy that excuse 100%, but I would love the opportunity to see Florida play Georgia, and hell, if that game ever does go to Athens or that game ever goes to Gainesville, you can count that I'll be there.
Oh no, I think if it ever went to Athens as well, I would make the trip from North Carolina. I would make that trip in a heartbeat. Spend some savings or something. Who knows, right? You find a way
Yeah,
to
that's
make
right.
it.
That'll be
All
a good
right,
one.
so I'm gonna
But
go.
you got to make it to Jacksonville. You got to go to Jacksonville. It's a hell of a day.
I'll see. I've look personally. I've been to Orlando, but I know that trip, and it's a brutal one.
Yeah,
So
no, nothing good about Orlando. In fact, there's not a lot good about Jacksonville either. But that game itself is an awesome day because everybody's tailgating together, tailgating next to each other, having a good time, talking trash. But for the most part, it's very very friendly. There's not a lot of fighting and not a lot of bickering. It's a fun rivalry game.
Oh no, I can only imagine. I know I've talked to several people, Georgia fans that's went. Obviously, there's heckling. That's just a Georgia. That's just a rivalry. But it's always a good game. It seems like it's always intense when there's fans in the stands. Right. Last year was kind of a weird. I hated that year, but at least we had football.
Yeah,
Obviously we'll take it now that I think you're looking at full capacity this coming up year. It's going to be nice. We're
yeah,
going to
I
take a
think
quick
so.
break, everybody. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come in and we're going to talk the season predictions for the Gators. So stay tuned. Ever since I started podcasting, I've used Buzzsprout, and let me tell you this, you cannot go wrong with Buzzsprout. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. One of the hardest things about creating and starting your own podcast is not knowing what to do. Buzzsprout, it's super easy. They will help you out in regards to what to do. Buzzsprout will get your show listed in every major podcast platform. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and Buzzsprout is the best partner you could imagine. You'll get a great looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop into your other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, and other tools to promote your episodes. And there's a lot more than just that. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get your message out to the world. Follow the link in the show notes and let Buzzsprout know that we sent you. Get you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for the paid plan, and it helps support our show. Welcome back, everybody. Obviously, right now we're looking at the Florida Gators season predictions. Dan, I'm going to post this up, and I want you to start off. There we go. We're going to go down each column first. Looking at it right here, you have Florida Atlantic, South Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. All right, so obviously these first 6 games, I think the first two easy wins. I think
Mm-hmm.
they're easy wins. But I think all eyes are on week 3.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so obviously, and looking at after Alabama, we go to Tennessee, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. I think my prediction is 5-1 going in to the back half of your schedule. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that you're exactly right. That's what I was going to say. Alabama does come to Gainesville, which is nice instead of going to to Tuscaloosa. Alabama is just so stacked all the time, and they replace all of their talent every year with seemingly even more. I do think that Florida has a really really strong chance and should be 5-1. I think there'd be a lot of disappointment if they weren't 5-1. I think a lot of fans are already chalking up that Auburn game as a loss. So yeah, I agree with you that Florida will be 5-1 there.
Looking at it, obviously, I think the one, obviously to start the season, you look at Florida Atlantic. I think that's just an easy win.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you look back in the past, South Florida actually used to be a problem.
Right.
I just don't see them being the program that they are where they are now. I don't see them being the program of old. And I think this is where you win, obviously, because I think you go to South
Yeah.
Florida. So
Yeah, Florida's coming to Tampa here. University of South Florida, strangely, is in Tampa, not in actual South Florida. Yeah,
yep.
so they'll be here. South Florida is interesting. They should be able to be better than they are. They've changed coaches a lot. They tried Charlie Strong last year, or not last year. Pardon me. 2 seasons ago, he got fired, but he was there for a couple years, and it just didn't work out. On the right, probably cultural fit. I think Charlie Strong was just about over it. But they brought in Jeff Scott last year, and Jeff Scott came from Clemson. I think that he's the right guy. I think South Florida, being based in Tampa, obviously has a rife recruiting opportunity there. I think that you'll see them climb the ladder again. Maybe not as quickly as one might think, but I wouldn't be surprised that if in 5 years South Florida is better than UCF.
Honestly, I kind of agree with you there. I know, obviously Gus, the Gus bus departs the plains, goes down to
Yep.
Central Florida. To me though, I'm curious to see how he handles Central Florida.
Yep.
I think, this may be a take for both of us here, but I think Gus benefited from the recruit, the prowess of the Auburn name and brand. I just don't see him doing as good as people might expect him to be at Central Florida. So, to the fact that South Florida could be better, within the next 5 to 10 years than Central Florida is not a stretch to me.
Yeah,
I
and
just like I said, I just don't trust. I just don't trust Gus Malzahn enough.
I think that UCF did really well under Scott Frost. I think that they obviously had some good talent that worked for them. I was very surprised to see, and I guess in a way, that Tennessee went and hired Josh Heupel. I think Gus will be a fine coach. I think that he'll maintain a lot of the status quo and what they were doing. But this is what I'll say about UCF is that I really, 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 truly think that Gus Malzahn is probably only there for a year or two. I think that he goes in, he maintains status quo. Somebody else is going to hire him. They'd be silly not to, right? So, I think that UCF is going to be a program that's always going to be that stepping ground program. And hell, South Florida is probably going to be the same with Jeff as well. I just think that there's a little bit more talent. I think it's a bit of a better school, a better opportunity at USF if somebody can capture that and somebody that wants to be there. But we got off track there. I think that Tennessee is going to be bad again this year. I think that Kentucky is, obviously going through some changes in their offense this year. And then Vanderbilt is going to be Vanderbilt. So.
Yep. So I'm gonna pop this back up here for a second, though. Obviously everybody looks at week 3. I think this is the one game in Alabama's schedule that could really spoil their perfect season, at least in the regular season. But it really depends on Emory Jones's development, in my opinion. Bama's defense is going to be as good as expected every year. It never fails when the Saban train is rolling. But can Emory Jones make enough plays? Can Demarcus? I think Demarcus Bowman might honestly be a starter. I think going out, from Clemson.
I don't think so. I don't.
Really?
This is why I say. This is why I say that. I mean, Demarcus Bowman is unbelievably talented. Demarcus Bowman missed a lot of the spring. with an ankle injury or a leg injury. So I don't think that he's going to be starting. I'll tell you why. Dameon Pierce is going to be now in his fourth year playing at UF and playing meaningful snaps there. Same with Malik Davis. Malik Davis is in technically his third year. Well, I guess it's technically fourth year coming up. He suffered an injury, but he's going to be a redshirt senior this year, and he's got a lot of talent. And then, but Florida's bell cow, I think next year is going to be Naquan Wright. He really came on. He can do a lot of things. He can, catch out of the backfield. He can run. He can break tackles. He's fast enough. So I think that's who Florida is going to really. I think that DeMarcus Bowman is going to get a shot. But if Florida's stacked in any one position more than any other, it's going to be that running back position. So DeMarcus Bowman is good, but I think that you're going to probably want to wait another year before it's truly DeMarcus Bowman's show. And then Lorenzo Lingard really came on this spring as well. So who knows? But there's too many people that deserve the ball for it to be a one-man show, in my opinion.
Fair enough. Now, so, I look at, like I said, Alabama is going to be the one game, or, the Florida-Alabama game is going to be that game that could see Alabama getting their perfect season spoiled. Obviously, I can't do this. I couldn't pull for anybody in this game. I know you're a Gator fan, but I'm a Gator hater. I can't pull for either one of y'all. I can't do it. It's gonna be, but it is gonna be a game that I will watch. In all honesty, I think it's a game worth watching. Obviously we'll be playing, I think, South Carolina that week. Yes. So I'm gonna obviously watch that, but I also am gonna have to. You just have to watch the Florida Alabama game.
You sure do.
Considering what we saw in the SEC championship game, I think it deems the credibility of watching it at least another time. But
yeah,
to your point,
game obviously there was a ton of transfers or not 10 transfers. A ton of this season is.
Dan, you there? Sorry.
Yeah, did you lose me?
No, I think there may. I mean, we're having some kind of difficult weather here, so there may be a little lag in the stream itself. So we'll just have to kind of keep monitoring, or at least I will. So obviously, just bear with us here for that. Looking at it though, let's pop this back up here. I think now we're good in a situation where we're both on stable connection. You were talking about Alabama and the Florida game. I think you had mentioned something about transfers when it got real laggy. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, no, I didn't. Sure. I didn't mean to say transfers. I meant graduations. You have a lot of the main players in that game. Right. I think that Florida can beat. I mean, I think that they can beat Alabama. I don't think that they will. I see Alabama probably, as in probably a 9 or 10 point favorite right now.
Gotcha. Not, obviously, I think it should be a good game. But like I said, I think it really depends on the quarterback play, right? If Emory, what can Emory Jones do? Because obviously we've seen it. The quarterback can it can make you or break you. And we saw it in the cocktail party with us. Obviously, we played them in the regular season. We played Bama last season. So, I, as a Georgia fan, I understand what quarterback can play, what quarterback play can mean. So I think ultimately, it depends on that. But I still have Bama winning that game.
Sure.
But then you look at your back half of the first half. So you look at, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. I don't even think there's a question here. Tennessee and Vanderbilt are the two bottom feeders this year in the SEC East. I genuinely just don't see Vanderbilt being competitive, in my opinion. Tennessee they're doing so much to try to rebuild. Heupel is, but they're just so far gone, in my opinion, with the investigation that happened and the sanctions and stuff. That was almost a program suicide that they committed, really. I just don't see them being competitive at all this year. But obviously in between those two games, I think you look at Kentucky. I have this feeling that Kentucky could be your surprise team in the SEC East between them and Missouri. I think Kentucky can nudge out and finish top three. Now, whether it's second or third or whatever, that's to be determined. But I genuinely think that Kentucky's defense, with Stoops there, can cause some problems for opposing offenses. Typically, we play them. It's a very tricky game. Um, they always play tough nosed, hard nosed defense. As you saw in the draft, Kentucky players going off the boards, mostly defense. They Stoops has got that defense going good, but I just don't know if they have enough firepower to beat Florida. So obviously, like I said, we'll end up 5-1 going into the second half of the season, which leads us to the last six opponents. So you go to LSU, right? Which that's always a tricky game. Just watching that game, it's always a tricky game for both teams. It could go either way. Obviously, I think then you have your bye week, and then it's a cocktail party. And then after that, you go to South Carolina, home against Samford. You go to Como, and then to finish the season, you bring Florida State in with Norville. So, what are your predictions for the last six? I'm going to say you go 5-1 here as well. So I think you end up being 10-2.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah, I'd have to do a little bit of research. I know LSU was down last year. They still did beat Florida, in that Marco Wilson infamous shoe game. I think that Florida just probably overlooked that game. They were looking forward to, the SEC championship. They just didn't put it all together. Just kind of a weird day overall. LSU obviously has a ton of talent. They recruit very, very well. Their questions are always going to be on offense for them. Do they have the quarterback and do they have the talent there? So I think that game's a toss-up, and I think the game against Georgia is a toss-up. I would probably lead to Georgia being the better. If I had a gun to my head right now, I think Georgia would beat Florida. If I had a gun to my head right now, I think that LSU would probably beat Florida again next season as well. I think that Florida has a lot of question marks that we just don't know the answer to. So I'm going to probably say, just for the sake of being slightly different, I'm going to say that Florida goes 9-3 next year. I think that they beat South Carolina. I think that they beat Samford. I think they beat Missouri, and I think that they beat the tail off of Florida State.
That's your in-state rival, so you got to do it. But I'm telling you right now,
not
I
only
don't know
that,
what
they're
it
not
is.
very good.
See, I'm just curious to see what Norvell does there. There's a lot of hype around Norvell right now. But I'm just curious to see what he can do. I don't think he does it this year. I think Florida, beats them in the swamp. So it'll be interesting to see. But we got Chad Buchanan here saying Florida will go 9-3, kind of to mimic what you were saying. I can see it going either way, and I think it really hinges on the LSU game. The reason being, I think you go 10-2. LSU does have a lot of talent. They have a lot of talent coming back with Eli Ricks, Stingley. You got Keyshawn Butte. You got Miles Brennan, which is one of the top SEC quarterbacks predicted right now. But I think there's a huge quarterback battle going on there. Obviously, you go and Marco Wilson throws his shoe. Becomes quarterback number 2, and then cost you the game, unfortunately. But I think that just shows you that Florida can still beat LSU. So that's my logic. It took a freak play and a mistake, for LSU to come in and beat you. And you know what I mean? So being fair to myself, I think LSU does take this L to the Gators this year. So like I said, I think you end up 10-2. Obviously, the cocktail party is going to do its thing. It's going to dictate who wins the East. And I think Georgia pulls away there. And that's why I think we win the East, but Georgia, with Florida coming in second. Obviously, with the tiebreaker at the cocktail party.
I think LSU's is an interesting team. I actually disagree. I think that their quarterback's going to probably be Max Johnson this year, and he's the guy that came in against Florida and beat Florida in his first games. I think that they're all toss-ups. Outside of the Alabama game, I think that Georgia obviously is a very, very talented team. I think that LSU has a lot of talent on their team. Just depends on what team shows up. If you told me that Florida was going to potentially go, 8-4, next season, it wouldn't necessarily, cause too much of a battle against you. I think, and Chad had another comment there about, Florida going to LSU. Florida historically hasn't played that poorly, at Baton Rouge. They had that big Baton Rouge. So, I'm not as worried about that. We'll see. I think that what Florida needs to do to win games this season is that they need to be methodical and they need to play, mostly mistake free. And I know that that sounds like coach talk, but Florida just, they're limited in talent in some areas. So where they need to make up, in talent is in coaching and in good solid play. And then what they need to do is they need to have they're really outstanding players, the guys that are your 5 stars, your Brenton Cox, your Gervon Dexters, those kind of folks. They really need to elevate their play as well and play like 5 stars and not, Gervon Dexter had a fine year last year and Brenton Cox was very much a fine player, but kind of a one-trick pony. He really needs to step up if Florida wants to go, 11-1 or 10-2 next year.
I want to obviously go back to the cocktail party here. Obviously, I know that, in my opinion, that's probably the biggest game. Well, I don't know. Bama might be y'all's biggest game outside of that, but the rivalry.
That Georgia game's the bigger one.
Gotcha. For us last year, we obviously that's the game that's probably the biggest in everybody's eyes. But for us last year, when we played Bama in Tuscaloosa, that was almost what felt like could be a national championship type game that ultimately, without JT Daniels, turned into a second half disaster for us. But ultimately, that offense couldn't be stopped. So I want to get your opinion here. I'm going to predict the game for the cocktail party. I'm going to make my prediction here, and I'm going to say that Georgia wins 42-28. I think ultimately Florida's offense can score points. I think you can with the running back core that you have, and obviously some room there, and ultimately the cornerback situation here for Georgia. There's a lot of talent, but a lot of inexperience too. So I think that the offense causes some problems there, even with Emory or whoever's at quarterback. I think there's a possibility there, but I think our offense can actually throw up points. Obviously, this is bearing that nobody really is injured right now, so this is way too early. But I think our offense is just going to be on a different level. I would like to think with the balance. You look at the receiving core. Everybody's talking about the depth there, but we're RBU for a reason. And right now there is just so much talent in our running back room as well. So I think Georgia has a capability to really pull off a high-powered offense. That's something that we're not used to. Georgia fans are not used to this kind of high-powered offense. So I see us, really throwing up 42-28. So with that being said, I want to hear your prediction for the cocktail party game.
Oh man, put on the spot here. I'm going to go. That's a lot of points, and I know last year they scored a lot of points. I'm going to go a little bit lower. I'm going to maybe go 35. 28, 35, 31. I think Georgia wins right now. Obviously subject to change. But the biggest, I don't know if Florida is going to give up 42 points. In fact, I don't know if they're going to give up 35. We'll see what that looks like. And you can say that last year, certainly they would have, but it takes a lot for Florida to historically give up that many points in a game. And I know that I said 35, and what's the big difference between 40 and 35? But this game isn't historically a super, hot, battle, right? I mean, last year you guys got out to a quick 14-0 lead, a fluke play, and then, a couple of, plays, and you guys marched down the field. But I do think that Florida is going to have a solid roster this year. There's too many question marks for me to say that I think that Florida beats Georgia right now. Obviously you guys are returning JT Daniels. You guys have some great, depth in the wide receiver room. I think if our defensive line, can take advantage of your offensive line being hurt, then Florida has a chance. But right now, I say you guys 35-28.
It's still, honestly, I think that's a reasonable score. I know what seemed like last year, though, you looked at the teams, and honestly, your offense was as high-powered as I've really seen in recent memory.
Yeah, no, what?
And so, like I said, with you losing a lot, I still think that, I hate to say it because, I'm having to wear the shirt, but I think he can still coach, all right? I have to respect the coaching prowess that he has, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think defense is what causes a problem, in this game, Florida's defense. But, it could be a situation where, our defense gets to Emory Jones. We've typically been a good run stopping team. So, maybe you're right. Maybe the high scoring game might not be something this year, but you could see a lower scoring game. This
Sure.
is this is what makes the cocktail party so fun because you don't know what to expect going into any cocktail party game, period.
Yeah, no, I think that you're right. Florida has a lot of question marks, but there's still some question marks about Mark Richt and his coaching as well, and some situational football, some situational awareness there. So, um, I'm excited to see what this season can be of football. I'm excited for watching games in person again. I'm excited that we're getting to a point where Florida and Georgia are consistently battling for that top slot like it should be. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think that this game has historically always come down to momentum shifts, right? It was the next year. It was the storming the field. Or no, I had that in reverse. Yeah, the storming of the field. I had that reversed, right? So
That we did.
yeah, the
Yeah.
storming of the field, right? So there's that. Then there's there's always usually a player that triggers 2 seasons ago. Florida gets within a touchdown, and then you guys march down, and I think 3 or 4 plays, and put the game a little bit out of reach. So there's always that 1, 2, 3 momentous plays in the game that change it. Dan Mullen is a great coach. He schemes really well. The offense, is going to put up points. It's just a matter of, how does this offense change with Emory Jones at the helm, and don't knock it, but Florida has an unbelievable quarterback in Anthony Richardson right behind Emory Jones, so I think you'll see a lot of as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was curious about with Anthony Richardson is, I've never really been under the impression that Emory Jones is the guy. I always thought Anthony Richardson was a little bit better. Maybe that was a little bit of an odd take to say, but I just think he's more of a true quarterback, whereas Emory kind of seems to be that kind of like that, kind of like that Kentucky, right, where they have that running backs playing quarterback. Not to say that he can't, make the plays and stuff like that, but it just kind of has that feeling to me. So I thought Anthony Richardson might be the guy. I probably will be moving forward, but we'll see.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson is a little bit, and I'm not comparing the two. So when the internet hears this, he's a little bit more Cam Newton, and
Yep.
Emory Jones is not really that bulldozer type. When you put a helmet on Emory Jones, he very much looks like Cam Newton. He's probably a better passer. I'll say this about Emory Jones is that there's still a lot of question marks because we don't really know, right? Like there's not been a ton of opportunity to see Emory Jones in like real meaningful game situations where he was counted on to put the ball in the air and put the ball where it needs to be. I'll say this though, he is now, this is what I said about Kyle Trask a couple years ago. Kyle Trask really excelled with the wide receivers that were on the second team when he was on the second team, when he was on first team and they were on first team, right? So like Emory Jones is now going to be throwing to the guys that he's been throwing to as second team quarterback to second team wide receivers for the last 2 years because now it's their turn to be the number ones, right? So there's a lot of chemistry there. There's not been a lot of turnover, in that room. Florida returns, a sixth-year senior in Rick Wells. Jacob Copeland is there. Jacobian Fraziers is a guy. Jamarcus Weston is a guy that Dan Mullen has talked a lot about. So there's a lot of talent there. Florida has, a couple of good, tight ends in Kamori Gamble and gosh, I'm forgetting his name. The other guy from Lakeland High School will come to me in a second. But Keon Zipperer, right? So so Florida has some talent there. Now it's just a matter of putting it all together. But it's just so unknown because Florida hasn't had to rely on those guys yet. So we'll see.
Yep. And I know one more question here before we let you go. It was weird for me seeing that Florida didn't have a spring game this year. I want to know why didn't Florida have a spring game? I don't know if I never heard anything about it. I'm just curious why they didn't have a spring game.
We don't know, and that's a question that has bothered the fan base for a while. It was announced that there was going to not be a spring game. Pardon me. It was first announced that they weren't going to allow fans in, and then it was announced that there wasn't going to be a spring game, and then they announced that they were going to do this like ESPN special that was going to show on the SEC network, and it was going to be like an inside look in football. And to be honest with you, it was a recruiting pitch, which is what it is. Like I know a lot of Gator fans are mad, but again, why do you care so much about a spring football game that doesn't really matter where you're not going to see a lot anyway? My take on it is that I don't know if Florida was ready slash I don't know if the administration, from an optics perspective, wanted to put it out there. I don't think that they had a game. I don't think that they were going to have a game in front of nobody. I'm surprised that they allowed fans in the stands during the season, but then said that they weren't going to allow fans for the spring. So I don't know if there's some optics or some politics behind it. Started their spring very, very, very quickly. I think they started like 5 weeks after the season started. So I don't know if it was hey, we're not ready. We just want to get this over in case there is a COVID spike again and the spring gets canceled like it did last year. But I don't know what the reasoning is. And the second somebody finds out, please let me know, because it's a very peculiar choice, I would think.
Yep, I know Chad. I got it posted up here. Chad says he's down in Florida as well. There was no real explanation, so I think that's a question the whole country's curious about.
It doesn't make sense. Miami had a spring game, FSU had a spring game, UCF, USF, they all had spring games. Florida didn't.
The national championship, the national champion, UCF Knights.
Okay, my apologies. The 2017 national champion Golden Knights. Yes.
Yeah, they got more. They got more than all of us right now, man.
They sure do. Congratulations to them. They even created their own logo for it. So
they did, and they put the banner up too, if I'm not mistaken.
They sure did. Hey, but you can't dog them too much. Who was it? FSU put themselves. They hung a banner of like being nationally ranked. I'll try to find it real quick before we end.
If you can pull that up, please do. I'll wait for that. I got to see it, because if I can find something that you can clown anybody with, I love doing it here. Look, there's no rules here, man.
So take a look. Just type in FSU basketball banner on Google and look at images. But they hung a banner on their rafters when the postseason tournament was canceled last year, and it says NCAA canceled. It says number 4 final ranking 2020. So it's pretty wild.
I mean, considering there. So a Facebook user says, "What up, Chad? Just for a disclaimer, guys, if you're on Facebook, do keep in mind that the platform asks for permissions, so that you have to grant that so that people can actually see who's commenting. So that's the reason for the Facebook user. But nonetheless, though, Dan, I just want to say thank you again for coming on. Obviously, on this good old Cinco de Mayo, coming to talk cocktail party. And kind of just bringing the rivalry to this podcast, man. I love talking this rivalry. You hear it year round. It's just the way it is. So I just wanted to thank you for coming on. Real quick though, where can people find you? Where can people find your work? Go ahead and let people hear where you're from and all that stuff.
Yeah, awesome. And hey, thanks so much, Robert, for having me on. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at DK Thompson. So DK Thompson, THOMPSON. That's where I am on Twitter. And then I also am a co-host of the Stadium and Gale podcast with my friends Nick Del Torre and Corey Knowles. We are the most listens to Florida Gators podcast. So would love, if you're ever interested in knowing what's going on in the Florida Gators world. We spend a lot of our off season, and our goal is always to try to find former Gators and former players, of all sports that have cool and interesting stories. That's really where we get in our bag, is really trying to listen to folks in their time at UF. So we had Quincy Wilson on, former Florida Gator DB, who's in the NFL this past week. And we also had Darren Heitner, who's an attorney who helped write the name, image, likeness legislation for the state of Florida that's going into effect. So super informative show. So, obviously the state of Georgia is looking at NIL as well. So if you want to know a little bit about what NIL is, what it isn't, and what it's going to do to potentially change the landscape of college sports, check that out. But I appreciate you having me on again. That was Stadium and Gale, GALE.
There you go, guys. Hey, just remember, for all you Georgia fans, tomorrow, West End Zone, Governor Kemp signs the NIL into law. So obviously that's a big deal, and I know Florida's doing the same thing. So obviously there's more to stay tuned there. I'm sure there's going to be some content about NIL coming soon. I'm just going to let you know that. It's a big deal. High school athletes, college athletes, huge deal. All right, Dan. Hey, man, I just wanted to say again, thanks for your time. And on that note, guys, have a blessed Cinco de Mayo. Drink responsibly. I'm going to say that now because I know there's going to be some drinking. I'm sure I'm going to get off here and probably have me something too. So drink responsibly, and y'all have a great day, and go Dogs.